Welcome everyone. Let's jump in discussing some of the complexities of aggressive political strategies and their unintended consequences, particularly around Trump's agenda.
I'm ready for this deep dive. So, what do you think was the primary economic fallout from the policies?
Well, it's like his trade policies. His tariffs, for instance, created economic instability. Businesses and consumers felt the pinch with inflation rising and markets getting all over the place.
That ripple effect on the economy is pretty significant, right?
Exactly. And beyond that, there were also attempts to, cut disability benefits, reduce overtime eligibility, and oppose extended unemployment. These moves particularly hurt working-class supporters.
Right, so it wasn't just about trade. The domestic policies were also having a heavy impact on the very voters he was supposed to empower.
Absolutely. You see, these economic measures weren't just abstract numbers. They translated to real hardships. It's like a domino effect. When the cost of living goes up, families struggle to make ends meet. And so the working class feels each policy change directly.
Yeah, that really paints a stark picture. And I've heard there's also the issue of voter alienation, correct?
Yes, exactly. Some swing voters who might have thought these policies would work to their benefit ended up expressing regret. They found themselves disappointed when the financial impacts hit instead of the promised benefits.
And I recall there were even contentious interactions at town halls, with voters calling out issues like Medicaid cuts and government inefficiencies.
That's spot on. In those town halls, the discontent really became public. People confronting Republicans over those cuts was a clear sign that many felt abandoned by the promises made.
And moving into the cultural side of things, there's talk of how his rhetoric ended up increasing social divisions. How did that play out?
It was pretty striking. His polarizing messaging created a climate of, intense division.
Yeah.
This divisiveness, while maybe energizing a certain base, ended up alienating more moderate supporters who valued unity over conflict.
And on a personal level, that kind of aggressive rhetoric can even strain relationships among communities and families, right?
Totally. It's like his words not only divided political ideologies, but seeped into personal interactions, isolating supporters who might otherwise be inclined to compromise or dialogue.
Hold on a minute. While I see the point about divisiveness, isn't it sometimes argued that in such polarized times, some level of rhetoric is expected? Not every harsh word necessarily translates to alienation.
That's a fair challenge. But even if a bit of polarization was inevitable, the extreme measures taken here really did have a cost. The fallout wasn't just words. It ended up costing votes among swing voters and moderates who value a more balanced approach.
I see what you mean. When rhetoric goes overboard, even those initially sympathetic can step back.
Exactly. And then there's the issue of governance. Trump's authoritarian tendencies raised concerns about undermining democratic principles. Supporters who cherished democracy found this particularly disappointing.
Absolutely. They questioned if it was really right to adopt such a top-down, rigid style.
It's like a leader trying to hold onto power by building a fortress around himself. But in doing so, he actually weakens the very foundations of the democracy he claims to uphold.
Yeah, that's a vivid analogy. The idea of a fortress that's built on shaky ground really resonates.
Exactly. That authoritarian streak not only alienated a broader base, but underscored how policies meant to consolidate power might actually be self-damaging in the long run.
Right. I find that intriguing because it suggests that the blend of economic missteps and divisive tactics can cumulatively erode trust, not just among political opponents, but even within one's own supporter base.
Absolutely. If you rewind back to the economic repercussions, the unintended inflation and market volatility meant that everyday life got harder for a lot of people. Those actions, though they might have seemed like strong stances, ended up hurting the very voters they aimed to energize.
Yep, and this was made even worse when benefits like disability or overtime protections were slashed. The pain was very real for many families.
Exactly. And then there's the factor of voter alienation. Swing voters who once might have rallied behind the populist rhetoric ended up feeling, well, betrayed when the economic hardship set in.
So are we saying that the economic mismanagement directly fueled a sense of alienation among these voters?
Definitely. The policies created an environment where not only did the working class suffer, but those who might have been on the fence got disillusioned. It's like a chain reaction. Hardship leads to dissatisfaction, which then sparks contentious debates in community settings like town halls.
That makes perfect sense. And culturally, the aggressive messages only deepened existing divides, almost like adding fuel to a fire that was already burning.
Precisely. It's like his aggressive style was the gasoline in an already volatile atmosphere. It incited internal conflicts, making it harder for even long-time supporters to see eye to eye on what really was best for the community.
Although I see your point, I wonder if there were any silver linings, as some argue that his approach did galvanize a base that felt long ignored. Surely, that kind of mobilization isn't completely negative.
That's a valid counterpoint. However, if you dig a little deeper, you find that while a core group might feel energized, the overall picture shows that the tactics ended up burning bridges with swing voters and moderates. It's a trade-off that really ended up limiting broader appeal.
So, would you say his own the Libs strategy functioned as a double-edged sword? On one side, it fired up a loyal base. On the other, it undermined the broader support structure.
Absolutely. It's like building your castle on sand. You might have these impressive walls, but if the groundwork is unstable, it's only a matter of time before the whole structure starts to crumble.
That's a striking image. The concept suggests that such divisive strategies not only isolate a leader from potential broader support, but also, over time, weaken the legitimacy of their leadership, even among loyal constituents.
Right, and history might well remember these tactics as not just controversial, but actually self-defeating on multiple fronts, economically, socially, and in terms of governance.
So, looking ahead, could these outcomes reframe how future political strategies are developed?
I think it offers a strong cautionary tale. Leaders need to really weigh short-term gains against the long-term health and cohesion of their entire base.
Yeah, it's fascinating. The interplay of economic policies, cultural messages, and governance styles. Do you think voters will eventually shift their allegiance when they see the broader impacts?
Well, experience tends to speak for itself. When the price for policy missteps falls on essential services and local economies, the electorate starts questioning whether the cost is really justified.
Exactly. It all boils down to the market of public opinion. Once discontent spreads, political landscapes can shift rather dramatically.
Totally. If leaders ignore these signals and persist with extreme tactics, they risk isolating themselves further while inadvertently empowering their opposition, even among those who started as loyal supporters.
It's definitely a risky proposition. The discussion really underscores the need for a balanced approach in policy making.
Right on. When you consider the economic repercussions, the alienation of swing voters, the deepening cultural divisions, and the challenges to democratic governance, you eventually see that what might seem like a solid strategy in a narrow sense can have wide-ranging, unintended costs.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all interconnected. This whole debate reminds us that political strategies need to be holistic, considering not just the immediate heyday of support, but the enduring trust and stability of a diverse voter base.
Exactly. When policies serve only one segment of the population, they risk fracturing the social fabric. And over time, that fracture can lead to broader instability, both economically and politically.
And that instability can in turn lead to even more polarized and hardened stands on both sides.
Right. It all ties back to the idea that a one-sided, aggressive approach can ultimately undermine the very foundation it aims to protect.
I guess in the big picture, this tells us that what may seem like an assured strategy to win over a base can come at a high long-term price for a leader's overall support.
Precisely. And as voters become more discerning, these cascading issues will likely reshape political dynamics in ways that we might not even have anticipated yet.
This conversation really highlights a complex interplay of economic stability, social cohesion, and democratic values. It's been quite enlightening to break it all down.
Yeah, at the end of the day, while short-term gains may look enticing, sustainable leadership relies on balanced policies that rejuvenate trust across the board.
Well said. This discussion really puts into perspective the multifaceted impacts of divisive political strategies and how they might hurt even those they intend to protect.
Absolutely. It serves as an important reminder. When leaders sacrifice long-term stability for aggressive tactics, they may end up undermining their own base.
A cautionary note indeed. Thanks for such an engaging exchange. Until next time, keep questioning and exploring these complexities.